Okay, just arrived here to Hoosier National Forest, and as usual, there is almost nobody here. It is still quiet and just an absolutely beautiful day, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty nice week here. I don't live that far away. Drive over here, get my Coleman all set up, ready to go, drive back tonight, and then come back tomorrow morning with the two furry kids, Sammy and Jazz. Going to take them camping for the weekend. We're just going to see how it goes. I've never had them both together before. You know, here's a little driving tip when you're pulling a trailer, and I'm pulling the 1985 Coleman Sun Valley, but any kind of camper trailer pop-up that you're taking. You know, there's kind of a skill when you start going through some hills. These are not mountains. This is the Hoosier National Forest. And I usually run about 60, 62 miles an hour. But I know a hill is coming up. So right here, I'm starting to give it just a little bit more gas. Now I've got up to about 66 miles an hour, and now I am starting my incline. So what you kind of want to do is you want your vehicle to kick out of overdrive just like that. The Montana just now kicked out of overdrive, and it did it without being under a tremendous amount of pressure. You don't want to start a big hill, get up that hill and really start losing speed, and all of a sudden cause your transmission to have to shift down under a heavy load. Now right here we've planed off again, so I'm letting off the gas and I'm holding about 62 miles an hour. I'm coming up on a decline now. I always want to have my foot in the gas just a little bit and be pulling the trailer. You don't want to necessarily hit a big decline and let off your gas and cause your trailer to kind of freewheel behind you. That's a pretty dangerous situation. You always want to have your tow vehicle pulling your trailer. You don't want your trailer pushing your vehicle down a hill. So I'm going to have to pick up some speed coming down this hill. I want to keep the Montana towing the Coleman and not the Coleman pushing the Montana. So right now I've got up about 68 miles an hour right here. But I'm going to go ahead and even give it a little bit more gas right here, because now I'm starting this big incline. So as I start up the incline, somewhere about right there, the Montana kicked out of overdrive and into a high gear, but not the overdrive gear. The Montana now has enough power to pull the Coleman up this hill without having to shift under a heavy load and try. Something to think about, especially if you're new at towing a camper and stuff. When you get into areas like this, you know, if the interstate is nice and straight, you really don't have to worry about it. I really never use even my cruise control. I just always manually drive my vehicle. I just think it's a lot better, it's a lot safer that way, and it makes you pay a little bit more attention to the road. Just try practicing that and pay attention, and you'll do a lot better as you're towing your pop-up camper or your camper or even just a regular trailer down. So we're climbing another steep hill, and another thing I thought about, when your vehicle shifts out of overdrive down a gear and you're climbing a hill, you can try to maintain that speed that you were at when it shifted down, but really I don't do that, because you're going to talk about burning an awful lot of gas, especially if it's a big hill. It's pretty hard on your vehicle. This hill, I started this hill at 70, and now I'm down to about 62, and I may go all the way down to 60. It's gradually slowing down a little bit, and I can hear the engine, and the engine's tacking about 3, so the engine is working pretty hard, so I'm just not going to outwork my vehicle. It's not that important to me to stay at 70 miles an hour, 68 miles an hour, 65. I don't have to maintain that, I don't mind going a little bit slower if that's the case. You just don't want to drop below 60 if you can on the interstate. If you do, you got to be careful, because you're really starting to create a problem for getting into an accident from somebody hitting you from behind, not paying attention, texting on their phone, and coming right up on you and slamming you from the back. Kind of use this setup for this weekend to kind of just make sure everything is ready to go. This fall I'm going to take a trip up to the North Country, and when I get up there I get so far out in the middle of nowhere that everything has to be just right. I have to make sure I haven't forgot anything and all the systems are go. So that's why coming here today is a very good practice. Start out with, I'm going to try out my rain deflector, which I made for the top of the Coleman Sun Valley. I want to see how it's going to work. There's supposed to be some showers come in tomorrow evening, so I'm going to see if maybe this is going to work pretty good. I made it, but I have not actually tested it yet. This was a little device I came up with. I actually have a video on it on a rain reflector. Rain reflector just sits on top of the Coleman here. This Velcro strip right here is actually stuck on top of the camper, and then I've got Velcro stuck on the bottom of the PVC, and together they'll hold in place, and that way whenever I put my tarp on there, the tarp is not going to pull it off as I start to set the camper up. Good. But I'm going to try it out if it rains this weekend to see what happens. Okay, so the second thing I'm trying out is, you can see the bubble. I've got the bubble set up here. It looks to me like the camper is low on the left side, and if I lift it up it's going to bring it. So what I made is a little device, and I'm going to try it out and see if it's going to work. As leveling the camper from left to right, not front to back, but left to right, what I came up with was a solution like this right here. Now, I saw this in a picture somewhere in one of the camping sites. I did not invent this, but once I saw a picture of it, I knew exactly how to build it, and it made a lot of sense. Somebody had built one that looked just like this right here. It all depends how you look at it. Let's just call it the passenger side of the camper needs to come up a little bit. So I'll just set this in place and back up on it. Probably only about 1.5 inches is all I'll need. Unless I get someplace next week that has a little bit more of a slope, then you can go up to 3 inches, or you can actually back up to 4.5 inches if you needed to. Make sure that you get it from left to right. If it's more than that, I don't know. That's a pretty crooked campsite. You got to find you a different one out. Okay, you can see I have pulled up on the board 1.5 inches. I come back here to the level. Shazam! That's about as level as I think I can get it, so I'm very happy with that. So now I'll work on from front to back, but I like that from side to side. So here's the idea behind folding your tarp up the correct way when you get finished. That way when you go to put it back up the next time, you'll kind of know how everything's going to go. So for instance, I know when I folded my tarp up, this is the center. I folded it on purpose like that, so I know that is the center. Because there's not a lot of rain and I'm just going to be here a few days, I'm actually going to make it equal. So I'll have a vestibule coming out on the front, you know, probably about 4 feet. And I'm going to go ahead and hang it down about the same distance on the back side right here. And I'll just take it at a slope down here to the woods. Now, if I was going to stay for longer, only have a few feet on the back side and have a little bit more of a canopy out front here. PVC rain reflector put up. And now I'm going to fold this tarp out to the edges on both sides. The key to doing this whole thing, you kind of get your tarp folded out before you raise your pop-up up in the air, because once your camper goes up in the air, it becomes a lot more difficult then to try to tarp up. So if the tarp's already in place and you bring it down on both sides, once you bring it up, then it's very easy to continue it over the top of your beds and finish it. So that's why I come out on location and practice. I really like that brown side up. The other side is a silver side. But what's funny is I thought I had it right, and as I started unfolding, when I got to the final flaps, I noticed it was going to unfold with the silver side up. So what I'll do is I'm going to have to fold it back together, switch it around, and somehow mark it so next time I know, hey, you've got it the wrong way, flip it over and it'd be better. Make sure that the folds, where I can see the actual crease where the final folds are on top, that needs to be on the bottom. That's the way I need to unfold. But I'm hoping that makes a little bit sense. I know if you don't work with tarps, it gets a little confusing. What do you mean you got to put it one way and unravel it the other way? But the more you work with them, that's why it's important to come out into the woods, set your camper up, or even in your yard and practice. That way when you get out on location, you're not spending a lot of time figuring out which way does this go, and it kind of adds frustration. So now I've flipped my tarp over, so now when I go to unroll it, the brown side will be up. And really it makes sense. Fold it, of course you don't want a seam right on top, so that makes sense the way I've got it now. I just need to unwrap it from the sides. There we go. I'm hoping that's making more sense now. I'll pull out the beds, and then all I have to do is reach up there and grab the ends of the tarp and pull them over the beds, and then I've got it completely covered. I'm testing my rain reflector out, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work. But I just kind of want to see it. I kind of want to get it on videotape with the water pouring off of it. In the middle of summer, you don't really need a tarp on your pop-up, and you got to watch it because if you don't do it right, it makes the pop-up kind of hot. And if you have an AC on top of your pop-up, don't want to use a tarp at all. You're going to overheat your AC, and that's not going to be a good thing. I don't have AC, I don't have a heater. I just kind of, whatever the natural temperature is outside is how I like to camp. It's up to you. Everybody's different. Everybody has their comfort level. Now I'm going to go ahead and raise the pop-up. Okay, so there you go. That's a pretty nice little system right there. Not going to need it in the dead of summertime, usually, especially if there's no rain forecasted. But if you're going to go camping and you see 2 or 3 days worth of rain coming in, this is well worth doing because your camper is going to stay dry, especially as we start to migrate into the fall season when the temperatures start cooling down. If your camper stays dry, if the canvas stays dry, if the area underneath it stays dry, it just seems like it's warmer or not as chilly as when everything gets wet. Not that it's soaking inside your camper, but when everything on the outside, your canvas and everything gets wet, it just seems like it's a little bit more damp than if you keep everything dry like this. Okay, I got the 1985 Coleman Sun Valley all set up. I did forget a few things, and a lot of times when I camp closer to home, I don't pay a lot of attention and I go places like really fast without making sure everything is loaded up. I made my PVC tarp poles, and those are pretty nice. If you've seen the video, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, go to my channel and you will see where I made these. I guess they'd be PVC canopy poles, and they go out front. I wish I would have remembered them because without them, what happens is my line has to go from the tarp down to the ground. If I had my posts, I could set those up and they'd be like pillars out front, and it'd make it a lot easier and make the lines not so intrusive where they're coming down. So I'll show you another thing that I just learned that I've never done. You can see the ridge up on top, and I think that's going to be pretty nice. That's that PVC piece I made, And that way there, the water is going to run off on both sides and run down through the beds. You can see the beds are nice and covered. Hoosier National Forest is really good. North Face Campground is really good about having a lot of shade, which is tremendously important in the summertime. But if you were camping in an open field, you know, this tarp would get too hot, but you could easily roll each side up, and that way there you'd have your airflow coming in, and then at night, or if the rain moves in, you just roll it back out again. So it is versatile. But this is what I just discovered that I've never tried before. I picked these up a long time ago. Your grommets sometimes are just not in the right spot for tying down. And so they pick these up, and this basically just clamps on top of your tarp. And it's for if you need extra grommet spaces, and it's got a place to tie off right here, which is pretty nice. But what I discovered just now as I'm finalizing everything, how nice these work to just kind of fold that tarp up. So rather than have loose ends kind of all wiggling around and floating around everywhere, you can put those on there. It wraps it up almost like a Christmas present. It's got that nice fold. You can actually make a nice fold in it, and it looks pretty good too. Makes for some nice clean lines. Here I've got another one. They're pretty inexpensive. I think they might have been a couple dollars a piece. Probably got them at Harbor Freight, or I might have picked them up at Menards. I've seen different styles, clamps and styles, but they hold pretty good. I wouldn't be afraid of tying a rope on that and pulling that out if I needed to. I don't think they'd be quite as strong as the grommets that are on this tarp right here. Once again, I got this tarp at Academy, and it looks pretty strong. They look like reinforced grommets on there. LAF Space Film Fest. That's capital LAF Space Film Fest.